Welcome to the first day of the rest of the year for Penn State football recruiting, and I mean that arbitrarily because the class of 2027, as Ryan has said before here on the show, that started a year ago. So there's a lot to get to in that vein for Penn State football and their new recruiting staff. We're going to try to hit the ground running with the portal still open, although we are also going to be talking about a commit that happened last night on the Penn State football recruiting show. Welcome to our experts and to everybody watching here. Just as a out-of-the-gate thing, please like the video. Subscribe here to the YouTube channel. We're going to get you all the information that we have today to talk about Penn State football and what's going on. So, Fitz, what's going on? How you doing? What's new?
I'm great. Thank you. It's a nice little Thursday, windy, cold little Thursday. We're trying to, as I said, be 1% better here. And right now I'm looking up the Iowa State pronunciation guide for the latest commitment from the portal. So that's what we're doing here is we're always trying to get better. Someone noted on Tuesday that we suck at this, and we do, but we are trying, and that is all you can ask at this point. Hopefully that's all you can ask at this point. Sorry, it's the internet. I forgot about that for a second. But we're working. We're getting better.
So Ryan, I'm just going to get right into it here. The transfer portal is closing on Friday. Penn State football feels, for the most part, like they're done given the amount of players they've added in the class of 2026 and through the portal in the last 2 weeks. It's been a mad dash. But there was one last night, I would say long expected for some people, player, because it was another Iowa State defensive player and a defensive lineman. So who joined the Nittany Lions while I was trying to make dinner last night?
Ike, also known as Ikenna Ezeogu is how you do it. And I've been working on that for, 10 minutes now, right? So hopefully I got that right. But look, they needed seniors. They needed upperclassmen in that defensive end room, right? You have obviously, Granville and Kemaju and some guys who are very promising, but it is light on upperclassmen. So I think that's kind of the mindset there. Decent stats, right? I only had one sack last year. I think it was 14 pressures, 12 quarterback hurries. Like, there's some things there.
He doesn't play defensive end for them. So as much as he's listed at defensive end, he is more of a tweener in their system.
So what do you think he's going to play then, T. Frank?
I have no idea. This has been, I texted Fitz last night and I was like, I have been dreading this particular situation because I don't know. What he plays doesn't really exist in this particular defense because he was kind of a fix-it guy in a 3-3 defense where he had to play defensive end. He's a base defensive end where even if he lines up outside the tackle, a lot of times what he was doing is slanting inside and playing 3 technique at 285 pounds. And as a guy who is strong for his size and is fast for his size at 6'5", 285, those are all good things. But in the Big Ten, it's the same exact conversation with Elijah Carnell, except Elijah Carnell is younger, he's slightly bigger, and his movement skills at 290 look like a guy that translate better to defensive end. So for Ezeogu, I think he's going to be a D-end, given he does not look anything like their body types at defensive tackle. But at the same time, there is a reshaping of what he is and what he could be. And then, like Fitz, the other thing is he could just be a tweener. We've seen Penn State. Yeah, he could just be what he is, be himself, and be a 5 technique guy who plays head up on the offensive tackle and helps them stem between different looks to be a guy that just stops the run and is disruptive.
Yeah, let's not corner him. Let's not pigeonhole him. Let's not typecast him. He can be a guy that can do a bunch of different things. Amin Vanover was a guy that we always expected, early in his career to eventually move down to defensive tackle just because he's so naturally big. But the only part of the natural big thing that he didn't have was the weight. And I know that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But big hands, big features, all that kind of stuff that the last staff coveted, Amin had it. And you're wondering if this is another situation where you can fit that in, because if you're going to run multiple fronts, you need multiple body types, right? You've got different types of body types in that defensive tackle class right now. And I guess if we're going to lump them in there, that makes sense. I mean, we were talking about there was another UCLA defensive lineman that was out there that, Penn State kind of had on the hook, just kind of waiting for the go-ahead. He did not get the go-ahead, which, was kind of how all these things came together. And I know Ryan reported on Blue It Illustrated. He was asked about Jonathan Cooper, a week ago, which feels like a month ago. But you talked about guys potentially just showing up and enrolling, not visiting that big first weekend, not having a big to-do about it. And Jonathan Cooper was the guy that you were talking about. But this is another situation there where we're finding guys that are all of a sudden on campus. And that's it's I tell you what, it's different, and it's stress inducing if you're in the position that we're in. But at the same time, we try to stay on top of that as closely as possible. So get yourself a versatile defensive lineman that's got a ton of experience. I mean, that's really what's lacking, especially from this end room that has talent. And it still, I think, needs numbers. I think you need to add another guy or two here. That's more of a, your 250-pound guy that can play 3 downs instead of a run stopper or a pass rusher. You sometimes have the either or, and I think some of these guys are still either ors, the young guys on Penn State's roster. But at the same time, you need versatile body types to play multiple fronts.
Yeah. The thing that I find, I guess there's a lot of upside to the young pass rushers on this group, where, again, Max Granville is your speed hybrid athlete. I'm very high on what Alexander McPherson can be if he adds weight and gets up to it's clear these guys like length and strength at defensive end. So a guy who's 240 pounds, I expect Alexander McPherson to play much bigger than that. And by 255, 260 pounds. They seem to like 260 generally for defensive ends, given what I've seen from Danton Lynn over time. I guess the pure pass rush, I think this is where I'm trying to reframe these things. And Ryan, jump in if you want on this particular thought, but we have been conditioned that pass rushers mean speed, mean elite burst off the edge, athleticism to the quarterback, and there's more than one way to win and get to the quarterback. I don't see guys that have that part of a bona fide pass rusher on this list, and there's a lot of upside production there. And Ezeogu doesn't solve that. And so I feel like, as the portal is closing, there is still this opening that it felt like they were trying to fill in a couple of different ways, both from defensive tackle body types and, here at defensive end. So I guess from the big picture, zooming out from this particular commitment, let's look at the defensive line as a whole and the work they put in. What do you think of how they've done so far, adding these defensive body types and numbers to this room?
Don't look at me, man. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to expect, right? I see, some older UCLA guys who, certainly got a lot of snaps, but were kind of backups, right? I mean, obviously, they're in a situation where they had to get some bodies. I don't know, and I'm not trying to jip out on the question. Am I cautiously optimistic? I guess that'd be the best way to put it. I see the big bodies that we've talked about a lot, but I don't see the game changers, off the edge, the Chaz Colemans or, even, I'm not going to say even bring up an Abdul or Micah and those kind of guys, but like
the Twitch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the thing that I guess if you're a Penn State fan, you should be a little worried about maybe, or maybe these young guys will be it, right? I mean, maybe Chemistry is going to just take this whole massive big step and become, a beast of a player. But, the Granville, he's coming off an injury. You don't know what to expect there. That's kind of the concern. T-Frank, one thing I kind of want to transition quickly because I do want to get to 2027 stuff, but like Sean, they're at 105 right now if you include all the walk-ons, but we know a bunch of these walk-ons are grandfathered in before the 105 rule came into place, so they can technically keep going. But like, how many are they going to add? A bunch more guys? Like, I'm torn right now because I kind of thought it'd be maybe a little more aggressive here in the final days, before the ad drop and all that. And it doesn't feel like that's the case. I mean, 2027 is kind of seems like that's going to be their focus here these coming days. And, with at 105 right now, like I said, 18 plus walk-ons. I don't know. I just kind of thought maybe I expected a little bit more of a surge here at the very end. Am I wrong with that? Do you have any thoughts or have you talked to anybody about that?
No, I don't think so. I think that number one, I think they're probably closer to a full roster than, maybe people want to believe, if that makes sense, because you're looking at, certain spots. You'd love a premium left tackle. Everybody would love a premium left tackle. You would love more to solidify that depth chart at receiver. T-Frank, I think you guys had the show about this yesterday, talking about defensive end, talking about kind of everywhere. You want that explosive 3 technique. You know what? You want all the, I don't want to say luxuries, but you want the tools that you think are necessary to help you potentially win a championship. And I don't know that those number one tools are out there. And number two, that you've got the wherewithal and budget to bring in premium players at that position. I think Penn State is closer to their, for all the complaining about underspending, alleged underspending, that they're closer
Yeah.
to their number than I think that people want to believe.
Mhm.
And
They had to go into the portal and get almost 40 players.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
expensive.
funny. Let's just play imaginary situation. I've been thinking about this.
love this live.
If you were to spend $1 million on every starting position, that's $22 million. And that doesn't count specialists, right?
Should.
Then you have $8 million for the rest of the roster. And we're also talking about certain positions being $3.5, $4 million. That doesn't make any sense. Like that would be a suicidal way to build a roster, to try and get 22 starters, because that's not how like football in college especially works. To get that level of investment or that level of splash at every position. Now, I guess the thing is, Fitz, like the bulk of these starters, that guys we've penciled in as starters, are coming from Iowa State. And I feel like everyone thinks those guys are free. And that is or you're getting such a severe discount that you can spend elsewhere. And again, like these numbers are opaque. We don't know. And so there are these factors, I think, that go into this that people want to see more. But as you mentioned, like it might be closer than you think because of factors that you're not considering.
Yeah, these guys were not making much at Iowa State, and I think that they did come to Penn State on a discount. I do think that there's less money tied up in there than there would be for a traditional massive portal haul, and I think that was a big reason of bringing in a guy like Matt Campbell, a Power 4 coach that had Power 4 talent. Like I think that's number one. Number two, it's a big roster, and they're still still trying to figure out what the salary structure is going to be, because you nailed it. Your sorry, your example wasn't realistic, right? You're not going to pay 22 starters $1 million, but
right,
there are some big ticket items in there that eat up a large percentage of your entire roster budget, and it all comes from the same pot: recruiting, portal, retention, all that kind of stuff. It all comes together. Say you're working with this $30 million number that was been thrown out there, and Rocco Beck's $3 million, which has been thrown out there, then that's 10%, right? And that falls in line with your salary cap and the NFL's like guidelines. But also you need to fill out a quarterback room. It's not just one guy. It's filling out number 1 through 4, which is a step stool right there. You know, you go down as you go on, and you budget for wide receiver number 4, wide receiver number 6. You know, you've got all these numbers, and it decreases naturally. But at the same time, it's all money, right? It's all making sense that these guys could cost more to retain because they're not familiar with the new staff. Like it's one of those things where retention is cheaper than going out on the portal, but also these guys are more free than they would have been a year ago, right? So bringing back Nittany, bringing back Zane is different when you're bringing back a guy that's in I will say his own system, but knows the coach, knows the head coach, was recruited by the head coach. That stuff matters. So Kobe Howard sticking around. Not cheap. Like I understand that he had 7 catches this year, but not cheap at all. Like this is a situation where you need to understand the middle ground. Yeah. I mean, Cooper Cousins what did he start a couple games this year as an extra offensive lineman? Pay him as a starting offensive lineman is basically what they have to do, and that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of you have to allocate a certain amount for each facet of this. And when you're taking 40 guys from the portal, that's a pretty big chunk right there. So they're taking guys that are walk-ons, closer to walk-ons and things like that. And we treat them all the same now because of the 105 cap. But there are levels to this in terms of the guys that they're bringing in. So I think that is overlooked when you're complaining about not spending for Quincy Porter, spending $1.5 million for a 5-catch Quincy Porter. Like that's not going to happen as you continue to build this out. And I think there's a realistic option here where you're looking at the 2026 roster and thinking it's not a championship roster. You want it to be. You want to win. You want to put together the best roster possible. But to get yourself over the top, go out there and spend $1.5 million on somebody. Okay, that makes sense. But I don't know that this is an over the top, turn the hat around Sylvester Stallone moment here.
I think it's a competitive roster, though. I would say that like the pieces fit what they're looking for, and there is talent at each position. I have some concerns about different positions, like I've outlined. At the same time, like if you, I keep going back to this defensive tackle room. You have NFL aged defensive tackles, and if their job is to stop the run, I think they've nailed it at that particular position. We do want to get into to stop the run, to do that one thing.
Two things here. The $30 million number sounds really great, but I think that number everywhere is going up. So you're seeing different programs understanding that the roster spend keeps going up, and I do think this is a competitive roster. It's just a matter of there's different levels to competitive roster and championship roster. Yeah, Ryan just made that point too. In terms of it's getting more expensive out here. So that's and it's unfortunate because you feel good about going from 23 to 30. That's a nice little increase, right? That's a sizable percentage increase. But at the same time, if all the prices are going up, it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. And at the base of all of this, and literally what we've been talking about this whole time, is money. And if you want to help fix that problem, you can become wealthy and you can donate to the program. One way you could do that is by owning and managing your own businesses, and franchises are a great way to get into that. If you have the experience, but you don't have the startup, right? And you want to buy into something that's ready to go, or you can spin up very quickly. Andy Ludicky at My Perfect Franchise, he's a franchise consultant. So he doesn't sell you the franchise. He takes you through the franchise buying process. His services are 100% free to you because he's so good at finding the right people to put in the right situation that companies look to him for references. So if you are somebody who wants to get into this, you want to diversify, build wealth, leave a legacy, maybe you're Uber entrepreneur guy and you want to start your next thing, well, a franchise could be it. 404-973-9901. Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. He's dialed in on all the things you need to know about franchises. The newest ones, the ones that he thinks are fads, he's not afraid to tell you about that. And he knows where the economy and where all of these things are hot, the newest items that are successful. And he tries to give you as best he can a roadmap of where you fit into all of that with your strengths as he gets to know you, your investment level, your capital, all those things, and of course, your expertise. So give him a call, 404-973-9901, if you think that is you. I want to thank Andy for being a longtime sponsor here on the Penn State Football Recruiting Show. But we do need to get to 2027. Penn State recruiting is kicking into high gear because the transfer portal is closing. As we just talked about, the team is probably, for the most part, done with adding players through the portal. And that means the coaches now can focus on what happens normally in January for Penn State from the beginning month, the beginning weekend all the way through the end, which is 2027 junior days, recruiting. And Ryan, the coaches are on the road as of today, correct? So what's going on with the coaching staff and their pursuit of this very important class that has a lot of names that people are already familiar with?
Yeah, they've got 16 days to try and visit and get a foot in the door with as many 2027 prospects as possible. There were some schools out on the road last week, the schools obviously that don't have to have such a massive transfer portal haul and all those kind of things. But a lot of schools are really hitting the road this week. So they're not like last week. I kind of thought they were a little more behind for 2027 than I realized as I started kind of digging into more over the weekend and into this week. But it is a massively important 16 days here in my eyes, because the reality is, they are playing from behind with a lot of these top Mid-Atlantic prospects, and that's not me saying they're not going to be able to land some of these guys. I think there's still enough time for that, but at the same time, Penn State recruiting went desolate for 2 months, really. Yeah. And a lot of these guys kind of, other schools will come into the picture. You have other guys that you were in a great position with that now you probably going to be in bidding wars with. And, that's just going to be very intriguing to me to see how it all plays out, because spring practice is going to be here before you know it. February, of course, is a complete dead period. And, obviously electronic communication and all those kind of things take place in February. But, getting these guys on campus over the next 16 days is really important. But more so than anything, maybe getting out there and doing those in-home visits and those in-school visits to set yourself up for, getting a lot of these guys here in March. That's key, I think, because, official visits, we always talk about June, and that's how it mainly works, but they really can start in mid-April. And we saw a bunch in May last year too. So Like I said, that's all going to start moving pretty quickly here. But we know Campbell and Terry are in Pittsburgh today, or at least that's what I expected. Where I expect them to be, I haven't seen any confirmation of those kind of things yet on Twitter or wherever it may be. But that's what we expect, and there's some really good players out in Pittsburgh if we want to discuss them.
Yeah. So just jump right into it because I know we've talked about a lot of these players before, but Terry Smith, when he was fighting for his chance to be the head coach, when he was the interim head coach, I know there was a conversation about making significant offers to WPIAL players, and this is the first. I know, but all of these things point to these players. This region is super important. That's all I was trying to transition.
Well, Pennsylvania is incredibly important. There's 14 4-stars right now in the state, right? That's the average is 8 over the last, basically since 2020. So it's a really good year in the state. And like I said, that's a good thing on one hand. On the other hand, it gives a lot of other schools a reason to come to the state and recruit these guys, right? And we saw that kind of play out a little bit last year with some of the top level guys, and we're going to see it play out again this year. You're not going to get all of them, right? You're not going to get Spell and Hiller and Taylor and all those. It's just, that's not the way it's going to fall. Right now, you got to find the guys that you got the best chance with, right? And really make them priorities, because that's the best way, in my opinion, to build momentum and keep that going.
Do you think that's what they're doing today? Is prioritizing the players they think that literally starting today with visits? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they got to get in front of everybody. So it's going to, I assume, be pretty similar to when James and Terry would go to Pittsburgh, right? They're going to see probably Gabe Jenkins, Kevin Spell, Khalil Taylor. Obviously, Central Catholic has a bunch of guys, right? Zachary Gleason, Roman Thompson. James Halter's committed to Notre Dame, but I'm sure they're very interested in him. There's a bunch, right? So right now, it's just about putting faces to names, if that makes sense, right? And having some of those conversations, because you can do that now with juniors. That was a rule change. Was last year the first year of that, Sean, or is that 2 years ago?
I think it's been 2 years now.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's because, again, just look at how this has all come together. December was an incredibly busy period for Campbell to put his staff together. Sure, there was some recruiting, but then there was also positions like defensive line and running back and, other spots that kind of dragged out, and you didn't have that position coach, where on the opposite end, where you had Broomfield, who was, offering safeties pretty early, and Clanton's offering offensive linemen. So it's just kind of depends on the position and when those guys got here. But, now that they're all firmly here, assistant coaches can do in-home visits. I'm expecting Ryan Clanton to do an in-home visit today with an offensive lineman out of Ohio. I just posted that story a little bit ago. Head coaches cannot do in-home visits. They can only go to the schools, and you are allowed to see these guys twice, right? So you can do an in-home visit with just the assistant, and then the assistant and the head coach can do it at the school as well. There's also only 60 days and a lot of guys you got to hit. So I don't know how they're going to be able to handle all that with some of these guys. But like I said, right now it's all about getting in front of these players, because they are truthfully behind a little bit.
Yeah, it's a learning experience on both ends, because Ryan, let's go down the top 10 in Pennsylvania right now. Keemon Spell, Max Hiller, Matthew Gregory, Khalil Taylor, Abraham Cisse, James Halter, Jimmy Callis, Terrence Smith, Carter Bonner, and Gabe Jenkins. We'll just cut it right there. How many of those guys, number one, took any visits to Iowa State? Approximately 0. How many of those guys maybe gave the time of day to Iowa State? Over 0.5. Everybody loves to get offers and loves to put out.
I don't even know those guys have offers from Iowa State.
Yeah,
I don't know if they do.
It's one of those things where Matt Campbell's out of sight, out of mind out there, and now he's got to be the tunnel vision right there. Because Penn State is going to take a giant 2027 class, I think. Not like West Virginia signing 50 guys, but big for what we expect. And I think a lot of those guys are going to be Pennsylvania guys. And I know I fixated on the top 10 there, but there's some dominate the state in here, right? You're going to bring that in. And then on top of that, you think about the monetary aspect of this. It's going to be cheaper to get Pennsylvania players. It's going to be cheaper to get in-state guys. It's going to be of that trade-off. And I'm not talking about the top 10, but you're going to fill out your roster with Pennsylvania guys. And with the walk-on going by the wayside for the most part, they'll still be a part of college football. But there's going to be a middle ground where you're going to see guys that are good players that wouldn't necessarily have scholarships in the big picture as we previously knew college football, but they're going to end up on Penn State's roster. So I think that you're going to see a lot of emphasis on Pennsylvania and a lot of emphasis on the surrounding areas, but I think there's a method to the madness there in terms of getting to the 105 and getting quality players in there and not necessarily breaking the bank to do so.
Is there a certain amount of relationship building with coaches and high schools as well in this conversation? Because what you're talking about here is, first impressions and, the first year and trying to ingrain yourself into the Pennsylvania recruiting scene. I don't have a better word for it, Ryan. Is that part of the conversation about this particular first class as well, of establishing those relationships, which we talked about in the transition, trying to keep as many of those staffers, coaches on the roster to maintain, and some of them left. Some of them, they did not maintain all of those coaches on the roster. So I was just curious if you think that's part of this as well, not just the meet and greets and seeing kids, but also getting to know the coaches and things like that as well.
I think that's cycle. And I think Baltimore, that's big, right? Yeah, because a lot of Ty Howe, obviously had Kenny Sanders, who played a big role there. Dex, that DMV area, I think that's where that is more important than Pittsburgh, because you have Terry Smith, right? Terry knows everybody out there, and that's going to be important there. Philadelphia to some degree as well, but also Terry Smith has done a very good job recruiting the suburbs of Philadelphia over the years. A lot of those, Catholic schools outside of the city, but Deion Barnes was more so in the city, right? So St. Joseph's Preps, the Imhoteps, those kind of schools. So yeah, there is some of that to some degree. I'm not too worried about Pittsburgh. And also, like, Savon Huggins has pretty good ties in North Jersey too. I think that'll help them. But like, I really do look at Baltimore, DMV, down to DC. Like, that's an area where I would be surprised if one of their coaches isn't trying, down there today, trying to meet the schools and things like that. So we'll see. Do my best here to dig on where everybody was at. But for now, we know Campbell and Terry are out there, and that's going to progress here throughout the next week.
What are the kind of, that you've seen, the established relationships that this staff already has? I'm thinking of Ryan Clanton because reviewing some of their offensive linemen, they've got a fair number of, I think, very talented and maybe underrated prospects from Ohio. And so, like, Matt Campbell being from Ohio, like, we're focusing on Pennsylvania. We're focusing on the traditional kind of what has been Penn State, and James Franklin built into, like, the map of what Penn State is. Is there an expansion on some of this? Do you think, is that possible from what you understand and what you've researched about these guys?
I mean, Sean, is it fair for me to say I don't think we can answer that yet from the perspective of, like, if we're going to try to compare Iowa State recruiting to Penn State recruiting, like, yeah, I can talk to you all day about, Midwest ties and those things, but is that what they're going to do here? That's what I don't know.
I think they're going to do it on the front end, because you've got your relationships and you've got your guys that liked and wanted to go play for Matt Campbell. In a situation like that, you're finding yourself at a school where guys want to play for you, but they don't necessarily come to play for you, if that makes sense. So you're not the biggest logo or whatever, and that's gonna throw some people off. And I think that they're gonna lean into that as long as they keep those connections going, which is probably a 2-year thing. Like, I mean, I think that they'll never be shut out of there, but at the same time, it's not going to have the strong hold. And it's a 6-hour radius thing anywhere you go, right? It's as true as in Ames as it is in State College, as it is, even in Auburn, just like, I don't know why I threw out Auburn there. But you're looking at a different sort of setup here. Ohio, I think, is always going to be a scrap state. I think you look at the way that Ohio State, for lack of a better term, brainwashes those guys into they want to be a Buckeye from birth. And that is a compliment in the highest order, because very few schools are able to lock down their state like that. Ohio State is one. LSU might be another. But there's also a ton of talent in LSU that gets away because of Texas, because of all the SEC schools. But Ohio State's in a special spot, because they have a lot of talent in Ohio, and they keep it home, and high-level talent in Ohio. So even with the connections via Mount Union and all that kind of stuff, I still think you're looking at kind of the same thing that we've seen over and over again from previous Penn States. Is, hey, you might find a gem out there at some point, but it's probably not the 5-star guy that's going to get out there and go. I mean, they've lost guys like Jackson Cantwell, guys have gone to Clemson and guys that have gone elsewhere. But at the same time, you think about the highest rated guys from Ohio that Penn State has gotten. Well, Drew was there. Penn State offered him well before anyone else that was on that level. And then Caden Saunders, it was same situation. And Ohio State didn't think twice about that one. So like you've got to you got to play the cards that are dealt in Ohio and go from there, even with the connections out there. So I think that's something tough to work around. And we're still trying to get a bead on specialty areas in this staff, because you're bringing in those guys from the Midwest who have their Midwest connections. You mentioned Savon Huggins has New Jersey connections and in New England, coaching with Boston College and things like that. And those things are very important, but you got to try and solidify yourself in the DMV. That's why, losing Kenny Sanders hurts, losing DJ hurts, losing guys that have established relationships in those certain areas where it's a different demographic than Central Pennsylvania. You got to be able to recruit the cities. And that's where I have questions about where the staff is going to land.
I'm just also, I think we are part of the recruiting and evaluation network. And so I don't want to discredit that work, because I think that, the stars matter in terms of here are the most talented players. I don't think that you can really argue with the fact that from an athletic perspective and from a potential perspective, the star system, I think, is pretty good at identifying which players have the highest chance of being good based on what skills they bring to the table. That being said, fit and culture and all those other things, I'm just kind of curious as to, and this isn't really a question for you, but I'm just bringing up this idea of, are they going to pursue stars, or are they going to pursue guys that fit the measurables that they're looking for at positions? And are they going to, have a different approach than maybe what was going on with Penn State, near the end of the James Franklin era, where it felt like they were building towards being competitive for those 4 and 5 star guys in the region and maybe select few outside of the region. And I think that also has to factor into this, because they're not going to get every 5 star. And they might not be interested in every 5 star. Like, I could see some guys from the past class that just would not fit what we see from them and what they valued at different positions in this first build of what they have gone out and tried to select for the team. So
do you remember in Dumb and Dumber when Harry and Lloyd broke open the briefcase and found out that it was filled with money?
I only watched Dumb and Dumber when I was like 6. I don't really remember the movie. I apologize.
You watched Dumb and Dumber at 6?
I watched The Fugitive at 5.
It since is a really you find yourself in a weird spot right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, Matt
I have a lot of older siblings, so that's how that happened.
Matt Campbell and his staff carried that briefcase without opening it for a long time at Iowa State. They did not have money to play with, and now they got to Penn State and they found themselves with a bigger budget. You don't know how you're going to handle that, because you could, do what some fans want and spend it all at one spot. Like, go crazy right now, buy your Lamborghini, throw out IOUs. Here you go, whatever. And that's not the right way to do it. Number one. Number two, I don't think he's comfortable with that. So Matt Campbell is going to have to meet someone in the middle in terms of getting out of his comfort zone. Number one, paying prospects, which was a big problem for Penn State in the 2026 cycle, as you saw them just kind of hung up there and beaten for several top level prospects in the class. And understand that part of your new coach bump nowadays is to give a different sales pitch, give a more exclusive sales pitch to some players. So I think that you're looking at a situation where Matt Campbell is going to have to make strides in terms of paying high school guys for incoming freshmen, where it was a little bit more rigid in the previous regime, and a lot more rigid at Iowa State, where they just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Bearded and Broke 92, I'm assuming he's a couple years younger than me, but we had the same childhood. He watched Hunt for the Red October at 5 years old. Favorite movie? Same. Exact same. Like, yeah, that's exactly what happened when you have older siblings. And there's parents now, like, oh, we can't watch this with the kids up. Like, that did not happen in my family. I watched whatever everyone else was watching, and so, like, yeah, Hunt for the Red October. I'm trying to think of some of the other movies that, like, seriously, you watched that? National Lampoon's European Vacation. I think I watched it like 10 years old. And if you know that movie, like, oh wow, you definitely should have seen that one. Ryan, are there other 2027? I don't want to know what movies were inappropriate.
That pop up to you.
What were the other movies?
Again the other night, because it's a fixture in my childhood. So yeah, that's where.
What was that?
Ski Patrol, you're probably not familiar. It's a classic.
I know Ski Patrol. Yeah. Hey, the one thing I'll say is, like, with the money part is, like,
rest in peace.
Does the gap become bigger too, right? Because that was a thing I think James was uncomfortable with. as far as what the bottom guys were making to the top guys. And obviously there was a massive discrepancy, you know, when you talk about those handful of Drew Allers, and that's always going to be the case with your top quarterbacks and stuff. But, you know, what are some of the lower guys, the 85 to 105 kind of making compared to, you know, and what can you take from that to help you win on the high school trail? Like, that's something that I'm very curious to see, because it kind of feels like Pat wants more of that. That's the vibe,
right?
At least,
yeah.
So, but it's good. I mean, as Sean said, go ahead.
That is, I just keep saying this, but like, that is the conflict in this conversation, is what was said at one point by administration and what we are seeing from, or what we are talking about in kind of speculative but reasonably intelligently speculative terms about the coaching staff. And like, that dichotomy or that kind of conflict has been at the center of the argument in the chat that online, is that of, I thought we were getting Luke Wafel, and like that, you know, whether or not that happens, how all of that plays out is still to be determined, but also part of the conversation that we're trying to lay the groundwork for what we see, and whether that's too negative for certain people in the chat, whether that's entirely too positive for other people in the chat. Like, we are trying to at least lay out a realistic picture of what it looks like for Penn State recruiting in 2027. Any other final thoughts or interesting things here, Ryan, from the 2027 conversation before we pivot into our final one here for 2026?
Found it interesting today that Savon Huggins offered Isaiah Rogers. I'm sure that they have been in touch with Keemon Spell as well. But in my opinion, it's going to be very difficult to get Spell now. And I don't know how much is that a position that you want to overpay. I think maybe Penn State, if they could do things over again. Again, we talked about this before, but like, you paid a lot of money to Katron and Nick this past year, and that's positions where you can rotate and you know, maybe that could have been better spent on defensive tackles, for example. But you know, how much is that a spot that they want to do that compared to, you know, Isaiah Rogers, Kelvin Morrison? There's some other really good backs here in the area. So that's something I'm curious to see. Obviously, they're going to push hard for Keemon, but I'm not as optimistic. Sean's more optimistic about Spell than I am.
No, I just don't like using percentages because they're awful and evil. I'm out of character here in that Spell is an exception for me, because he is very, very good. Running backs can have the ability to play right away, or at least have the ability to make plays right away. Not necessarily bringing him into play 50 snaps a game and pass protect and all that kind of stuff. But he is a guy I think is special. And I think that a lot of ground can be made up in terms of your perception, in terms of your playmaking ability, number one. I mean, look on the field first, but also there's credence to buying a win. You know, I think there's credence to landing a 5-star prospect.
Mike Loxley does it all the time. How's that working out for him?
He's got a little bit of a different program base.
I know. We've talked about that a billion times.
Like I said, this is a departure for me, because I'm a guy that doesn't spend anything in, whether it's Penn State's money or my money. Like, I'm cheap, right? You know that. So like, it's one of those things where I think that there are so many positives here, and yes, it kind of flies in the face of what you're looking to do as a program and culture, but also it'd be pretty nice to have the sports car at some point, right? Because you know, when you talk about retaining and you talk about long-term roster management, I don't know that exists as much anymore, and might as well try and get good fast.
My counter though to that is, when I look at what this roster is right now and what they've lost, especially in some young positions, and you're going to overpay for one position. Well, what if, you know, you step it up a little bit more with Khalil Taylor, Carter Bonner, Leighton Von Brandt? To me, this roster is in a position right now where you need to get as much talent as you can at a lot of spots, and I just don't know that running back's the spot to do that at this point.
It's not, and it's not this isn't the year to do it, like, especially for luxury spending on a position that I was having a conversation with my wife trying to explain. She's like, so Saquon Barkley, because we were talking about like some of the Penn State running backs, and she's like, so Saquon Barkley this year, is it that he can't see the hole? I'm like, no, the hole's not there. And so like, for a running back, again, the value of what you do outside the scheme is limited by the fact that where you get tackled or where you get attacked on the play is based largely on what the offensive play caller dials up for you and how the offense it executes it. And so Keemon Spell at the college level, you can, like, if you have a superstar at any position, it's, it tilts the gravity. But running back is not a position to spend. But this is, I think, Fitz, where I'm with you on this, and like I'm also a cheap bastard, but I save my money and I get the nice thing that I want.
Yeah.
And so like there are positions that are independent or more independent of their teammates. Quarterback is the ultimate one. Receivers, if they can make catches down the field and make your quarterback look good. Obviously pass rushers, corners, like these positions that we talk about, these ticket items that can keep your quarterback clean. Anything that deals with stopping the run or stopping the pass or getting explosive plays. If you invest in those areas and find the right players to go after, that to me is the best hybridization model of retaining what was previously the right thing. Like you need a bunch of players to be successful, but you also need a couple stars. Stars do change the game for you, and you need to go aggressively and find those at the right positions. And
so if I'm pushing,
go ahead, Ryan.
I was gonna say, if I'm pushing for a quarterback right now when I look at this roster. If I'm pushing chips in, I'm pushing chips in on Peter Bork or Keaton Crozier.
But I mean, high school quarterback though, like that's what we're talking about.
I understand
too. So yeah,
and that's tough, right?
I get it.
That might not be an immediate dividend, right?
Yeah,
I get all that. I just think that again, when I'm just looking at this roster right now, like I know this sounds stupid because there's a whole new staff and everything, but like I feel like Penn State's always fine at running back. They always find running backs. Like just naturally have always been a position that they've done well with, and I think they'll be okay with finding some guys a little bit further down the totem pole. Where again, there's just too many spots right now where you have a lot of questions for, and quarterback's one of them. To be very honest, I mean Mansky, sure, we don't really know much about Mansky at all, to be honest, and Falzone is what he is, right? Certainly got to work on his arm, and Case Evans is coming from, a small school in Texas, right? So, I mean, to me, that's, oh, by the way, they don't even have a backup for Rocco Beck right now. I mean, that's another big concern. What happens if he gets hurt this year? I mean, because there's just a lot of holes right now. And that's why I brought up earlier, like when I look at the transfer portal, 105 where they're at right now, like to me, it just felt like this was a weekend to really try to push in on some guys, but maybe from a financial perspective, that's not really possible. And it really, truthfully, I don't know what they're seeing as far as guys really available for them, right?
Yeah,
there's big names. Like they're not getting a Jordan Seaton and stuff like that. Like that's not.
Yeah.
And I don't even really think, I actually don't feel that bad about the O-line. The O-line's one of the spots I feel kind of good about. Yeah.
I think they retained the right talent there. Phil Traubline had built up a war chest of absolutely talented offensive linemen that fit the elite category of physical traits. And so, like, they retained those guys. That was smart. And also, those guys fit what they want at Iowa State based on, I guess what I've examined of their preferences at tackle and guard, et cetera. And Z-Man says this, and Fitz, I'm going to come back to this one. Z-Man says, we'll take a 5-star stud wide receiver. Sure.
Great.
Everyone would.
That'd be wonderful.
as much as I just said, selective aggression, trying to find the right to, and maybe it is a 5-star receiver. But the one thing I think they've proven at Iowa State is that they can find guys that aren't 5 stars that are going to turn into what they want at the position. Fitz, you've talked about this. Receiver, there's a million of them, and it's easier to be an elite wide receiver and be hidden and obscured than it is to be an elite tackle or defensive tackle. Those ones are a little more obvious because there's 10 of them as opposed to receiver or corner or whatever.
I just think that we've gotten so deep into the NFL mindset that the running backs are not worth, they're interchangeable because you can go out and sign a bunch of guys. And I don't think that that's as true in college. I think that there's certainly some merit to the number 1 back and the number 5 back being very close. Not necessarily a depth chart, but like you're looking at guys that are uber talented, but also touch the ball 20 times a game. The 5-star receiver, does he touch the ball 7 times a game? I mean, you're looking at different math here. So yeah. And hey, Jeremiah Smith he's an outlier, he's an alien, whatever. That's great. He also had a great year last year with Quinshon Junkins and Trevion Henderson. Like they are 2 running backs that they road to a championship. Michigan did the same thing the year prior. So you've got some credence that the running back is more of a focal point in the college game. And also, you can't go out and sign somebody mid-year. Like, you're not going to find somebody to take over your depth chart and sort of, rise up and be a third down back. And then all of a sudden, guys change. And I think it's just so much different in the college game in terms of when you can acquire these guys, that it makes a difference, because when your roster is set in March or whatever, that's the roster that you're going to get in August now. I think. Yep. I still don't see this being a situation, because you can't enter the portal. Even a grad transfer can't enter the portal anytime anymore. So as far as I know, like, I think it's kind of gray in terms of the wording out there, but it's very interesting that the guys that you bring in right now, whether they win or lose a position in spring practice, are going to be the guys that you have in the fall. And that's very interesting to me. Again, I think there's lawsuits coming. I think there's guys that will challenge that, guys that just try and leave school and pop up elsewhere, because the NCAA is kind of scared of litigation, scared of being outed as a monopoly, and that there's some things that go into play there. So maybe all of this changes, but right now, in January 15th, you pretty much know what you're going to get from your roster. And you have to be confident that you are, number one, talented enough, and number two, deep enough. And I think that you're looking at continuing to add. So like for the offensive line, for example, you guys talked about, you feel pretty decent about the offensive line. They still have some development pieces that need to be, number one, what we think they may be, a guy like Cooper Cousins, or what they could be, a guy like Owen Alessini. But also they need 20 guys. They got 16, 17 right now. So they're going to continue to add bodies, continue to add those borderline between walk-on and scholarship type guys to fill out a roster, because that stuff matters for practice. That stuff matters for everything, really. So I think that when you continue to see this roster come together, you're going to see more guys like that than you're going to see stars. So that's really what you're looking at.
I want to get to 2026 here in just 1 second. Although we have a couple of things I want to get to in the chat, and I'm going to go through these in reverse order. Bizzle, regular here in the chat every day, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, says his birthday's on Tuesday. Happy birthday, buddy! He's going to Anti-Fragile for his birthday dinner. So happy birthday! I don't know if I'll be able to make it. I'd like to come say hi, but the timelines of all those things of work, I don't know, but I want you to know, like, we appreciate you here. Appreciate you supporting the people that support us as well. And speaking of that, we have another celebrity in the chat. Jeremy Seltz is here. He says, thanks for the pleasant distraction, guys. He is an awesome member for a very long time of BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, and might have been the first time he's commented here in the chat in a while. Fitz, can you just give us an update on what's going on with Seltz, and tell everybody about our mission to help him out?
Yeah, Seltz has time to watch us now, so we're appreciative of that. Seltz starts chemo today, so he is being prepped as we speak. And I said, "Hey, you got time to watch the live show?" So he did have time to watch the live show. Jumped in the chat. We are incredibly supportive of him. We talked about the GoFundMe, and we really, really appreciate everybody that was able to give what they could to contribute for a top of the line guy. And I'm not just saying that because he's listening right now. I'd say that, mostly I'd say the same stuff about him.
He never says that about me, but go on.
No, you're not listening. You don't come to the tailgate. So, but no, all the best, buddy, because you've got so many people out there thinking about you, praying for you. Yeah, it is going to be a fight. And I know that he's been, not to get too far into this, but he's been in the ICU for a while, and now he's moved up to being able to handle the chemo. And we know that he's going to do it because he's awesome and he's strong and he's a fighter. So we're fighting right there with you, man. And thank you to everybody that's come along for that journey.
Yeah. I dropped the link in the live chat, and also it's the first link of this video if you want to donate to Seltz in his fight against cancer. We appreciate it on his behalf, and I'm sure he appreciates it deeply as well. A. Campbell says from I wanted to say Christian McCaffrey from Matt Campbell's presser today, because it says CMC. How would you say he's performed in the portal versus your expectations from what he said in day one? You have a thought on that? It
depends on what your expectations were. I mean, I expected a lot of good, young, talented players to leave, and that would be a hard fill. It really kind of varies on position by me. I think a lot of the things I've seen on offense, I think look pretty good. To me, I just keep coming back to defensive line. They got the big bodies. I just don't know that they have the game changers. But I like the linebackers they brought in, and I feel pretty good about the secondary. I think Broomfield's going to be a good coach, and obviously Terry Smith retained quite a few quality cornerbacks. So I think a lot of fans had expectations of bigger names, right? Splashing the cash. Pat kind of did that to himself in his press conference, I think, which I thought was always kind of unrealistic to some degree, especially when you have to get so many guys. And oh, by the way, you want to make a splash on the recruiting trail when you're moving to a new area as well, which they have to keep some retained. So I'd say it's been okay, but there are some spots that I think, like, man, Rocco Beck gets hurt. You could have a really bad season right now, and that's worrisome.
And they run the quarterback. They run the quarterback, and so they got to figure out how they're going to do that with Rocco Beck, who, by the way, got hurt last year. Both shoulders were hurt last year because he ran the ball a lot and got hit. Fitz, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah, depth is really what I'm looking at for this entire roster. You're making a change to the 105, which is going to change how you operate at some positions. And you're right. If Beck gets hurt, that's a crazy thing with college football, right? Is you feel that the investment is worth it for a guy like that to come in for 1 year. And there's ramifications for that. Gronkmeyer left, Smolik left, all those guys. You got Mansky as your backup, but there's so much on one guy's shoulders in that situation. So back to the original question, in terms of my expectations, about as expected to bring a lot of guys from Iowa State. It's probably more underclassmen than I accounted for in my first kind of guesstimations there. Because you're always thinking about starters, right? You're always thinking about the instant impact guys. And then when they get here, you branch out, you recruit the region, all that kind of stuff. So I just think that there's always been a middle ground, a giant middle ground between Pat Kraft's opinion on the portal and spending and Matt Campbell's opinion on the portal and spending. And I think both of them have to come and meet each other in the middle. You got to give credit to Campbell and his evaluation skills and his resume, really. Like, you got to admit that this guy's been pretty good at finding talent, developing talent, all that kind of stuff. But also that's not going to be everything at Penn State. Pat Kraft, you got to give credit for his brashness and his ability to say, hey, we have money. We want to spend money. We want to get the best players here. And that's not always going to happen for multiple reasons. But you're looking at bringing that together and meshing that. And a month is a very, very short time for that all to come together. So I think the portal's about as
it's 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks since he was hired, right? Like, we're beginning of December to the second week here in January, and he had to make an entire team basically
and the portal's only
out of two rosters and the portal. So,
the portal's only been open for 2, so going to continue to see them sort of meshing their viewpoints, I think, and going toward what Campbell's vision of the program is. And talked to some people in the building this week, and he's all football all the time. Like, he is what Penn State fans kind of ostracized James Franklin for was doing everything else and having the football come secondary. And this is kind of the complete opposite. So as many similarities as there are in the approach and in the mindset of this is how you build a team, from a personality perspective, from an outgoing face of the program perspective, kind of polar opposites there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because now we have fans being like, wait, when's he going to talk again? I was answering questions on that.
I haven't heard from him.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe signing day. We'll see. I don't know. We'll have to bug Kincaid about that one. But anyway.
And I'm just going to re-emphasize this. Some of the offensive line depth maybe isn't ready this year, but I was trying to put together like a depth chart to understand what this is all going to look like on the offensive side. And one of the offensive linemen that stood out to me was, here we go again, Cole. He is a 6'6", 290-pound left tackle from Centerville, Ohio. And Ryan, this is why I was bringing up Ohio and I was bringing up Ryan Clanton, is because this dude's a freak. He reminded me physically, the way his body is built, of Zaire Addison who went to Oregon last year. Like the athleticism, the length that he possesses. Now, in high school, and I was watching high school film from 2024 or whatever it was, he looked like he's about 245 to 250 pounds. So there's an obvious difference there. There's a lot of growth he had to do. But this is a Phil Troutwine offensive tackle, and they found him in Ohio. They found him in Centerville, Ohio, and took him to Iowa State, and now he's here at Penn State. Their ability to find players, and they didn't skimp on traits. When they could identify, they could go find them. This is, I guess, the thing I'm interested to see how all of this plays out with recruiting in 2027 is their ability to identify and target these players at these positions. I forget where that. I think that was just a tangent I had in my head for about 15 minutes. But I want to get to 2026. There are 15 players in the class of 2026 right now. Now, there's a couple guys we're going to talk about today. So let's say they get the guys on the roster, and we'll talk about them here in a second. Is 17, like, what does that say to you if they get 17 players in the class of 2026 about what they've done?
One of those is a walk-on, right? I thought the number was 14. Am I wrong?
You are correct. Yes.
Okay.
You are correct.
Okay. I mean, about as good as again. It's kind of like the portal. What were your expectations, right? I mean, I think.
Well, it's a multi-pronged conversation. It is, they blew up the 2026 class, and that was very bad. Like the class that they had, they could have done a better job of keeping that together. But they also kind of used it, again, collateral damage. And that is one part of the conversation. How they've been able to flip it around and turn it around is another part of the conversation. And it's understanding what's out there, kind of the best of what's around situation, taking guys that are versatile athletes, kind of the flyer type guys. And most of this class is flyers. Like there's no getting around that. You're not bringing in anybody. I don't look at that list. Even the guys that they had signed before Campbell got here, but I guess the guys that they had signed, in the early signing period are not instant impact guys in my eyes.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, guys like Tyrell Chapman and Amarian Jackson, just long athletes, Bryson Williams, long athletes that can run. This group, and I don't know how accurate the measurements are, but this group loves 6'3", 190 pounders that can go anywhere from cornerback to linebacker. Like you're looking at long athletes that can run, and that's the evaluation process at Iowa State, right? Find the big guys that can fit into the Power 4 game that aren't necessarily the top level the players, and go from there. So I think they're kind of making a best what's around situation. I'm not going to say it's great. I'm just going to say that there are some flyers in there with some traits that are positive. But you're really looking at 2027 as sort of the litmus test in terms of what they can do recruiting.
No doubt.
So let's get to these two guys, because I think it's a perfect transition to this player here who, Ryan, can you tell us a little bit more about Elijah Reeder? And again, if you're telling me...
an edge rusher.
An edge rusher. Not only that, 6'6", big frame, 210. This is exactly what we were talking about. Tell us a little more about Elijah Reeder and what's going on.
Also, his best offer was from Monmouth before Iowa State came after him, right? But that's not necessarily a knock. Like where he's from, kind of Bayville too. I know New Jersey's a heavily recruited state, but kind of where he is there, Central Jersey, out on the coast, like by Point Pleasant, those kind of places. It's just not.
Sounds like a lovely place to grow up.
Guy before, looking
at
Iowa State class when we heard Campbell might come.
Yeah. Never really took any visits, any of that kind of stuff, right? But there is some stuff to like here, right? And I trust Charles too, because this is the one guy that, talking to Charles about, a bunch of these Iowa State, former Iowa State commit signees that, of course, now are at Penn State. This was the guy that kind of pops to him. So just kind of exciting to see, if they're able to mold him. I do expect Penn State to get him. He's going to be on an official visit this weekend. Probably should have brought that up a little sooner. But I think there's a really good chance he'll be committed by, Sunday, Monday, somewhere in that kind of ballpark. And, as a player they're really excited about. Missouri came calling, Rutgers, a couple others came calling once he got out of signing. And he's decided not to pursue any of those options. And again, one visit to Penn State, I assume it's going to make that official. And obviously he won't enroll then until the summer. But, it's, again, a lot of these other guys, man. There's a lot of similarities and traits and things that you like, maybe that aren't quite, 100% on the level of some of the previous players we've discussed who have those higher ratings. But, there's certainly something here, I think, with Elijah Reeder that should have fans excited. And, if they do get him, I think he would end up being the highest ranked of the Iowa State signees. I believe so.
This question now from Newhart 25 beat us to the punch. What about Samson Gash? What can you tell us about that?
Well, Sean, he's doing pretty well out in Hawaii, apparently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Good for him. I wish I had known he was out there. We would have, packed a jet and gone.
Yeah.
No,
Get the private BWI jet. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Samson committed to Michigan State in the summer last year. Did not sign with them. Of course, there's a coaching change in East Lansing as well. Samson's got some tools to play with. He's very, very fast, and he was very productive. Detroit Central Catholic as a receiver, as a return man. Penn State's old staff didn't really recruit him heavily. He camped before his junior season, I want to say, and he was fine. I mean, there was nothing there that would have said this guy is a no-brainer scholarship type offer. So I see the comments about why didn't Penn State's previous staff recruit this 4-star legacy? I mean, they got to look at him. He was fine. Then he kind of took a jump from there as a prospect and didn't really give them much interest. I think he was kind of not happy with the attention that he got and the lack of offers, or the lack of offer that he got. And I believe his father was too. The kid told me that, but you're looking at a situation there where you get a fresh start, you get some connections there. Sam Gash played with Terry Smith. Terry called him up and said, "Hey, we got a spot. We'd love to have him fill that." Now, Michigan State's interesting too, because they've got Pat Fitzgerald there now too. It's a different situation than he committed to, which can be a turnoff, but it can also be appealing, right? You're looking at locking down an in-state guy from a Michigan State perspective that has a ton of talent, and he's really one of the only ones out there that's still out there. I think there's now 6 or 7 4-star prospects, so top 400 prospects out there. Thank you, Ryan. And Samson Gash is one of them. So looking at visiting later this month, and we will see what happens with the February signing period. I don't think there's a strong lean either way. I think he wants to get out here and see how all this comes together, see how the program's running, and make a decision there. Like I said, there's not too many guys out there in 2026 anymore. You mentioned Elijah Reeder, Samson Gash. Those are the two kind of the focused on now that the semester has started at Penn State, and you're really not bringing guys in to come and sign for the spring semester.
Yeah, Samson had a really good senior year too. I mean, he was
a riser. He was a late riser. Yeah,
right. I mean, he came to Penn State. I think he ran a 4.5. I remember he had a great shuttle. I want to say it was below 4.3. That was show good burst, and I think his broad was a tick under 10. This is 2 years ago too, but certainly a guy who seems to have filled out a little bit. And he ran. What was his 100-meter time? I remember somebody was pointing that out to me.
Something like that.
Yeah, somebody pointed that out to me.
The thing about his offer at camp and stuff like that is like, I mean, he's not a very big guy. Doesn't have great length features, all that kind of stuff. But also, like, he had 10 catches in his career at that point. So it's like, if you're gonna act like this is a misevaluation, I mean, it didn't exist back then. Like
we know a lot more right now than we did.
The prospect that he was didn't exist, and then you went and got 3 quality receivers in that old class, and you're weren't really looking at receivers anymore. So, and by that point, Gash really wouldn't have given the time of day, and I don't blame him because he didn't really want to play that role. Yeah,
I do think it's important for fans to remember, like Tysier Denmark, LeVar Keys. They both committed incredibly early in that class. Guilford committed.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rogers. Jasir Rogers. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, and obviously Guilford then was
committed as well.
Yeah, so it's something to just always kind of keep in mind, because there's been multiple topics on different receivers, and obviously Gash is the one now, but
it's not as simple as this staff sucked at receiver evaluation, so they should have offered him early. It's just not that simple.
Yeah, we've had the conversation about a couple of guys, right? We had the conversation about Ben Whitver as well, of a guy, and admittedly, like, different prospect here, Samson Gash and Ben Whitver, but also I don't think a bad prospect who has speed and all those things that that a lot of people covet. So receiver, interestingly, at one point Penn State had too many receivers. Did they get too many too early?
I mean,
Penn State's previous staff tried to do the exact same thing that Iowa State's going to do now, where they're going to try to find, because there is a lot of talented guys that, have those athletic skills. The difference is Iowa State seems to be developing them better than what happened over the last couple of years. Am I wrong with that? I think
and I think, it's not worth rehashing, but Penn State did turn a corner in 2026 in terms of recruiting receivers. And then it just all fell apart.
Yeah.
So, hate it when that happens.
Yeah. Just not in the nick of time. Guys, this is a great show. I don't have anything else here to discuss. Any final thoughts from you, Ryan, on what you want to preview for people to go to bluewhiteillustrated.com? One of my sales pitches I didn't get out there well enough today on this show was to subscribe here to the YouTube channel, of course, but bluewhiteillustrated.com is where we're going to read all this recruiting information in depth. We only get an hour every Thursday to talk about recruiting, so we have it 24/7 over at the site. What's coming from you tomorrow, this weekend, the coming
Just
days?
keep an eye on visits, man. I'd be surprised if there's not a couple portal guys, but right now it seems like coaches are out on the road and focused on 2027. So we'll see what pops up maybe Friday into Saturday. I do believe Carter Jones is visiting, 4-star offensive lineman, 2027 prospect. That's been out there for a little while now. I believe he's coming on Sunday. I think he's going to, is it Vautech Saturday, then up here? We're going to hear that a lot. Guy going here, then the Vautech over here. It's going to be an interesting thing to follow.
On maps these days. It's just so far down there.
But just visits. I mean, keep an eye on that. Obviously, next week we'll see the first real junior day, and that's another thing I'm trying to figure out. Like, I've been trying to talk to people about what to expect for these junior days, and like a lot of them kind of give me the vibe that they want smaller, more intimate, conversations and stuff compared to what we used to see with 50 some guys, not maybe 50 but 30, 40. But then others have been like, well, yeah, but we got to get in front of all these guys. So I'm hearing just different kind of things on kind of what to expect for it, and fortunately we have 9 days to figure that out. So we'll maybe hopefully by day 7 next week we'll be able to give you some info there.
Fitz, what are you working on?
Ryan mentioned that he's not sure what Penn State's going to do at quarterback after Rocco Beck. They've got a quarterback visiting this week. Wrote about it earlier this week on bluewhiteillustrated.com. That's an interesting sort of subplot there. But it'll be fun to see who pops up, because this last couple of days has felt like it's been a nice reprieve. I'm not gonna lie, but the dead period has really slowed things down, and now you get back into it and see potentially this weekend sort of chipping away and getting some names back on campus. I am with Ryan in that I don't think the junior days are going to be as big from a number standpoint as they were previously. But again, some of those things can come together quickly, especially if you're going to emphasize recruiting Pennsylvania. It doesn't take that long to say, hey, can you come here this weekend?
Yeah.
Show up.
Yeah. Easier to drive 2.5 or 3 hours than it is to get guys from further away and make a plan. Talked about it a little bit here on the show today, but I started writing this morning what to expect from what we've seen that this staff prioritizes from each position. This is for the 2026 roster, but it also then applies to recruiting of these are the body types they like. These are the player traits that I've seen them develop, not just in this particular class, but over time. I'm excited. I was so excited about it that I woke up at 4 a.m. and couldn't go back to sleep. So that's what I've been working on today. We'll get that out for you later today, hopefully. Also, we have wrestling show coming up this afternoon here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. I'm Thomas Rankar for Ryan Snyder and for Sean Fitz. We'll be back with more here when it happens from BWI Live.